Welcome to Caribbean Brilliance, where I, your host, Miss Francois, get amazing guests that are Caribbean American. I give them a platform where they could tell their story in hopes that it would inspire and empower the future and present generation. I'm that good. Today, I have this amazing young lady. I know her hairstyle, her hair look almost as nice as mine. She's trying to give me competition, try to put on the same color. But it's okay. Great minds think alike. So Miss Julia Jeffers, she's an award-winning actor, writer, producer, solo show artist, director, coach. Oh my goodness. It's a lot, okay? But that just means she's dynamic and wonderful, and you're gonna get to know her today. Hi, Miss Jeffers.
Hello, how are you?
Well, when people expect to hear a strong, real Caribbean accent, you're like, hello.
Hello, 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 darling. You don't have to speak proper.
So the first thing I want to tell people, she has a Saint Kitts Nevis, and you know what's always interesting when I hear someone from Saint Kitts, they say Kittian. What you
hmm
call someone from Nevis?
Nevisian.
Nevision. Oh Lord, hopefully I remember that.
hmm
So she's Caribbean American from Saint Kitts Nevis, and I want to go a little about your upbringing, because when you have parents from the Caribbean, that might be a different upbringing than if you were American. So tell me a little about your background and your upbringing.
Okay, so one thing for me is, I don't think it's a stereotype. I know for sure that West Indians, we work a lot. We might
Mm,
take on more than one job, 13 jobs. We're not lazy lima beans, right? And so I had this thing growing up where my mother she would wake us up, even if it's a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, right? Um, Saturday morning, for example, we don't have to go to school, but she would wake us up at the crack of dawn and she would come and she'd sing, wakey, wakey, wakey. As she opened the blinds, she's singing to us, open
yeah.
up the blinds. And it's like, you must get up. You have to be productive. You're not, you can't just sit around all day long. Right. And so I have that mentality now. And so it's sometimes you say, whoa, because I know I need to learn the idea of balance sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that work ethic from them, from both of them.
And I'm
And
sure that's what got you to be and do all the things that you have accomplished thus far.
it's true.
Do you come from a large family or a small family?
Well,
Like,
my parents do. My I just had one brother growing up, right? And unfortunately he passed away, but it was just him
mm,
and I. And but then my mother comes from a family of 11 siblings and same as my dad, from 11 siblings. So
wow.
we have a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins and so on.
And you used to go back and forth and visit family or other extended family?
Of
Okay,
course,
so
all the
yes, you're
time.
still a true island gal.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's get into
absolutely.
some things that you do. I mean, you have a lot of accolades. I might have to do a whole 2 hours, so we're gonna have to jump in and out of certain things, right? But one of the things that draw me to you was the whole thing of you created Pan Gyul, right?
hmm
So I kind of wanted to talk about that, and we could talk about other things at the same time. I mean, why Pan Gyul? Like that's the other thing. I know you're born in New York in the Bronx. How
hmm
and how do we go? Because we're gonna start here and go backwards. Why Pan Gyul? Why the name Pan Gyul? How did that all come about?
So it actually came from a story that a friend of mine said to me. He goes, I have an idea for your next one woman show, right? And he's from Trinidad and he knows a woman, yes. And I don't know if I should have mentioned this, but I have my step grandmother is from Trinidad. So
Okay, we
she
accept her.
yes, yes, yes. She passed away I want to say 2 years ago at 103 years old.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, God rest her soul. But she so I do have those, a little bit of Trini, kind of like and no, I wouldn't say
I
in
like
my
how you did
blood,
this.
but
This means Trini.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So but my friend who's from Trinidad, he says, I know this woman, this is a friend of his, who grew up at a time in Trinidad when females weren't allowed to play the pen.
And you see, I
And
wouldn't even think of that. You know, when you're in this time, you see what you see now and don't realize there's always a history behind it.
oh yeah, oh yeah. She grew up in the 50s and she had to sneak around to get lessons. And and so I said, this is really fascinating. I would love to tell this story. And what I ended up doing was I interviewed her and got some, just inspiration from her. And I based my show on her story. So it wasn't her story, it was inspired by. And
Wow.
so that was the actual one woman show that I did. And then I wanted to make it into a film. But when I made it into a film, I was also working with the Nevis government to help them build their film industry.
Mm,
And I was thinking of, different stories that I could write and different ideas and so on. And I was like, huh, what about the Pan Gyul script? And so I made it a Nevisian story, and I changed and I made it more modern. So it's not that she can't play Pan, because of course nowadays you see,
right,
little girls playing Pan all over the all our islands, right? All the
right.
islands, right? And so I made it more about, it's her mother who doesn't want her to play the Pan, because her mother
Got
is
you.
super Christian,
Yeah,
and doesn't want her daughter involved with men that are, doing
right.
that, or the cry, whatever it is, staying up all night, whatever. She doesn't want her to get involved in that at all. So that's the conflict there. But she still does manage, because her father plays the Pan. So it's also the relationship between a daughter and a father. Her
And
father's.
if someone wanted to see like this, so the movie basically is a movie, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And where would someone get to see the movie?
So it's a short film, and we
Okay,
are still actually in post-production. We're almost finished the editing
okay,
process.
wow.
And once I finish, I will be submitting it to various festivals, film festivals throughout the world. I know there's one in Trinidad I'm going to
Yeah.
definitely submit to. There's Toronto, New York, Miami, Cannes. I'm going to submit to as all the good ones, right?
I think that's awesome with at least bringing pan also to the forefront, because I know the history of pan, like that's the last instrument made in the 20th century. It started in Trinidad. I mean, it's nice for when people see beside the story, getting pan to the next, to the
Yes.
people
And
and
the thing is,
bring it.
and it was important to me because, I like the idea of showing it. And when I did the original show, I performed it in school. So it was very educational as well, because I talked about the history of the pan and how, Trinidadians.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And so I knew in this story, even though I changed the location, I made sure that I had the character mention something about the pioneers in Trinidad,
Well,
um,
we thank you.
yes, 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 to give props, and so that was really important to me to do. And my friend Emile Board, I'm going to drop his name, Emile Board, his father, Hugh Board, was very instrumental in Trinidad, and with bringing the steel pan to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
He played with Liberace at the time when
Really?
Liberace was big.
Wow.
Yes, his
No,
his
and I love history. I mean, I always believe we should know where things come from. It helps you to appreciate more and just pass it on generation to generation. But like
exactly
you said, the show came from you doing that one woman, it's a one woman show,
one
right?
woman
So let's
show.
delve into what is a one woman show? How long have you been doing that? Because then you help other people to get their one woman show, one person show, or solo show to the
Mhm.
next level. So what is a one person show or a solo show?
So basically, it's one actor on the stage, and that one actor can decide that they can, they might be doing a storytelling kind of one person show where they're just one character and they're telling a story, or they could decide that they could create a bunch of different characters to tell the story. And
And
so
how long is typically a solo show?
I would say a good length would be about an hour.
Oh,
An hour is enough time for an audience to come out for one show. There's some people who have maybe a half hour of their show, and they might submit it to festivals, theater festivals, where there'll be more than one other performer performing. Like, for example, the Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival.
mm-hmm.
They, as a matter of fact, this is a sidebar, but you should submit your show to the Los Angeles Women's Theater
Okay.
Festival. we'll get back to that. I'll tell you more details about that. But I think their deadline is coming up at the 31st of this month or 30th of the month. So
Okay.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so with that, they do multiple shows in one night. So you can have a shorter version of it. But most shows tend to be about an hour long.
And how did you get into something like that? Because for me, it's not like that is something I heard everywhere. You know, you hear about movies, you hear about plays, but people don't walk around and be like, yeah, I saw that one solo show or something like that. Like, how did you get into that?
I was inspired by Whoopi Goldberg's one woman show. She
Really?
did a show and it was on HBO years ago when I was a kid. And I always, growing up in New York City, you're around so many different cultures. And I was always someone who was like a sponge. So I pick up accents and languages well. And so I always like to do characters. I always like to mock people. And so um I knew in the back of my head as an actress growing up that one day I would do a one-person show. And my very first show is called Batman and Robin in the Boogie Down. And that was about my brother and I growing up in the Boogie Down Bronx.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately passed away, so it was a tribute to him. And it was, I played about 20 different characters in it.
In that one show?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
that's a lot.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, and even with thinking about like how do you decide to even begin to write something like that? Like you said, you're inspired. Like you're walking around, you're like, oh, I love my brother. I think I should do something. Like how does those
Yeah, well, with
inspiration come?
that in particular, I had a writing mentor. His name is Reggie Rock Bythewood. He's a film and TV writer, director, producer, but his roots are in theater. And so when I first started writing, he mentored me, he directed me, he produced my show, and so he guided me in terms of the writing component of it. And he knew that I wanted to do a solo show. He's the one who suggested that I'd make it about my brother because we grew up together, we're like family. And so he knew my brother. Uh, and the way I started that particular show is I started thinking about, okay, if this is about my life, what are things in my life that stand out to me at various points growing up? So what's a story that stood out elementary school? What stood out in high school, college, 20s, 30s, that kind of thing. And I did that up until his death.
Mm,
And but it was all things that related to our relationship,
okay.
so not just some random thing that happened.
So
And
most people when they write shows like that, it tends to be from their life most of the time.
yes, I would say mostly if you're writing for your first time writing a show, people tend to do it about their lives. And then for me, I went on because I have five that I've written and performed. And so after the first one, that's when then I did Pan Girl about somebody else's life. Then I did Chocolate Match, which was about my online dating experiences. So for with that, it was a portion of my life. And then Judgment Day, which has nothing to do with my life, but that stemmed from when Philando Castile and Alton Sterling were shot by the cops within days of each other, and well, shot and killed, murdered by the cops. And so it just came from the anger and frustration that I felt about the way Black people are treated in this country and all over the world. And so that stemmed from that. So it's more of a social justice piece.
Right.
And um, and then the fifth one is called Tio Pablo, which is based on I have family in the Dominican Republic, so it's based on my Dominican uncle, and he's this Latino lover kind of guy, and he would
Rico Suave.
Suave, and that he was actually in my first show, and he was so popular that I was like, okay, let's give him a spin-off show. So he got his own show.
Really?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's would you say of all the things you do, because we're gonna get into some acting too, because that's part of acting, is that one of your favorite things you love doing, the solo shows?
Well, that's my niche, I would say, as far as the theater world is concerned. There's so much I love about film, about TV, about theater, And it's really hard to say, to pick one and be like, oh my God, this is it, this is it. But theater, the thing about theater is it's live. You get that instant feedback.
Yeah, I
You're
like the
connecting.
adrenaline too.
Yes, with the adrenaline, you're connecting with the audience, you know. And so this and the adrenaline mostly comes from the fact that you can't say cut and do it again. If you make a
Yeah.
mistake, you have to
Right,
figure
you
it.
impromptu. You just
And
go.
it's interesting because I have a funny story about one of my shows. It was the chocolate match show. Um, and I was doing a portion because when I first did the show, I did a half-hour version, and then I added more to it, and it became an hour version show. It was probably more like 45 minutes. And so I was performing it in New York City, and I was doing the full show. And so the second part of the show was not as familiar to me. So, you know, I forgot a line.
Okay.
And when you're on the stage by yourself, you have nobody else to help you. And so I'm telling the story about this guy, that we met and da 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 da, and the date that we went on. And I said, and then you know what happened? I completely forgot. I was like, you're never gonna guess what happened. And then I was like, can somebody in here tell me what happened? And so I'm just stalling, really hoping that somebody's gonna be like, oh, he whatever. So finally, just by some, I don't know, miracle, it came to me. And I was like, well, this guy, he da 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 da. And I mean, and the people in the booth, my tech people, they're
Yeah.
looking on the script. They're like, where is she? What is she doing?
Oh, wow. That's
So yeah.
amazing,
So
though.
you have to be able to be on your toes. I mean, that shows you how important improvisational studies are. Studying improv, it's very important in acting.
And so, even for no, since we're going backwards, for like you say, studying. So, you went to school for this, you studied this. This is something you always wanted to do as a child, or you just fell into it by accident, or somebody in the family? How did
It's
that all
it's
happen?
it's what I always wanted to do as a child, but my dad came from Nevis. When he grew up in Nevis, he was always like, an MC, master of ceremonies. He always loved to write poetry and do theater and sing, and he played the piano and guitar. So he had that creative gene in him. And I remember that he did a play when he came to the States. He did a play, and as a child, I went to see it. And I believe I wasn't conscious of it at the time, right? But I believe that was the seed for me. Seeing him up on stage doing
Yeah.
that. And then of course watching TV and feeling like I wanted to be like the people on the TV,
Yeah.
and do that. And so I took dance lessons when I was a child, and also ended up going to the High School of Performing Arts, which is the school that the movie Fame and the TV show Fame was based
Hey,
on.
I
Forever.
wanna-
Yep, that one.
Thank you for telling people my age. I appreciate
I
you.
was gonna say, I was like, but wait, does
Some
she know
people
what
be
I'm
like,
talking
"What the
about?
hell is a fame? It was a fire."
Right, right, right.
But I
But
love
yes,
that
so
show.
that's the school that I went to. So yes, at a young age, I knew it. I knew that that was what I was destined to do.
And then you studied abroad also?
I did. I studied in Spain and also in France. I did because I thought to myself, when I went to college so I could have something to fall back on, even though I knew that I was going to pursue acting. But I figured, maybe I would do something with languages. I love Spanish and French. My French isn't as good as it used to be because I just don't use it. But the Spanish I'm fluent in.
Wow,
And yeah, so I studied in Spain for a year, and then I did a summer program in France the following year
that's
when I was in
amazing.
college.
And add in some acting. Tell people some reoccurring roles or some shows you've been on so they could be like, oh my God, I think I
Oh
see
my God. I well, currently I'm recurring on Tulsa King,
that.
which is on Paramount Plus with Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
And actually, so I did in the first season, I did one episode. Second season, I did five. And now in the third season just premiered yesterday, actually. And so next week, Sunday, I will be in the second episode of the third season. So everyone can tune in. I don't know how soon this will come out, but that's Sunday the 28th. And then also there's a show called The Residence, which is on Netflix, and
Yes.
that's an 8 episode limited series, and I was in all 8 episodes, and so that's still on, so people can check that out. And of course, Google me. I've done, so much other stuff, but those are the two things that are out
And
there right now.
when people decide to pursue like the acting, the theater, I mean, tell the part, because now that you're saying all these things and telling people all you've done and what you're currently doing, what is some of the challenges people would have if they're considering getting in any one of these roles? Because some you hear about people acting and they were weighing tables and going to all kind of audition. They never had a real job, sleeping with their friends in groups
Yeah.
and stuff. So,
Well, let me just say this, and yes, it might age me, but whatever. I started out in the 90s, okay? I started pursuing acting in the early 90s. So I did all those, like, when there were a lot of black sitcoms and so on. So I did like Fresh Prince and Martin, and you know, um also, like, I did Murder She Wrote, and
I love British short.
yes, yes, I did an episode of that. So I say that to say that I've been in this industry for a long time,
Hmm.
and of course the career has gone up and down, up and down. There was even a point where I took a break from the industry simply because I got sick. My brother passed away, and I ended up being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis
Mm,
right 6 weeks after he died. So it's like the emotions kind of affected me physically,
yeah.
and so I had to take a break because I could barely walk. And then several years later, I went home to New York to take care of my mother who had Alzheimer's, and I was her primary caregiver for 5 years. I was still pursuing acting during that period, but it wasn't as strong, right, as much as before that. So I say that to say that for me, if I ever doubted that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, having those two experiences showed me that I'm meant to do this, because even though I might have, taken a left turn for a moment, I came right back on the road,
Yeah.
and came back on the road, but also was shown, like, God was kind of supporting that, because I continued to work even to this day. But I feel like if I wasn't as passionate about it, if I was someone who really needed secure income coming in all the time,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't be here today. Like, I wouldn't be pursuing it still. I would do something else, right? I would go do something with those languages, or, I don't know. What would I do if
Yeah.
well, I teach, I could have pursued
Right.
teaching, acting, and coaching and all of that. I could have done that. Or I'm so fascinated by the health industry, but holistically. So I might have done some kind of, like, been a holistic healer or something like that. But this was what I meant to be. It was meant
So
to
if
be.
someone is like, I want to follow in her footsteps, what is one thing you would tell them to be wary of? Because the
Mm,
glamour and the glitter is cool. When you reach the loan, you're like, oh my God, I made it. But what should you be wary of? Or maybe when you most likely will see this and you may want to give up, or you might experience this and will want to give up.
yeah. Well, one of the things is, the perseverance, right? And also having the balance. And when I say that, I mean have a life outside of acting, so that when you go in on these auditions, that you don't have this kind of desperate energy about getting there. Oh, I need this job. I need this job. I need this job. Have a life outside of the industry. I mean, a lot of people need to work because the work isn't as consistent. So they have their side gigs, right?
Right.
But, but I would say if you can find a side gig that you're passionate about. So that's one thing, to have that balance for sure.
So as we come down to the end of the show, I want to find out if you're a true catician, right?
Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
So here are some fun questions.
Uh-huh.
What is your go-to local dish when you're craving home?
Oh. Oh. Okay, well, saltfish. plantain, of course, rice and peas. Um, but I also, if I don't have the rice and peas, I love ground provisions.
Yeah.
So, the green banana, the dasheen, the sweet potato, all of that. I love that.
Awesome. It seemed like that's one of the meals most Caribbean people go to, the ground provision.
Yes, yes. Because
What
it's,
is your
when we just
happiest memory of being back home in St. Kitts or Nevis? Something that instantly transports you back there.
mm, I would say so my mother's side is mostly St. Kitts, my father's side is mostly Nevis, right? And so, and then my parents got divorced when I was 9. So then after 9, I would take individual trips with them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would go with my dad to Nevis, I think I grew up with my mother's family more than my dad's family. So there were a lot of them in New York, and I was closer to them. So when I went to Nevis, it felt a little bit more special because I didn't know them as well.
Yeah.
And also because I was primarily living with my mother, it was my chance to be with my dad, and and experience Nevis through his eyes. And he had so many great stories. So being on the land, being on the island, with him, it's some of the most precious memories that I have.
Mhm. And let's see here. What is your favorite island phrase or saying that always brings a smile?
Nevis nice.
That's what I say.
They
Nevis
say Nevis
nice.
nice. Nevis nice.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
simple. Okay, awesome. Do you all have any, like, how every island always have some kind of thing that they make up or whatever, sayings, also additional sayings? What other sayings that if you say to someone else, they wouldn't really know what you mean unless you're from St. Kitts or Nevis?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see.
I know.
I mean, it's not they say miam. Do you guys say that?
No. What is
Oh,
meow?
so it's basically my arm,
Oh,
miam,
meow.
miam, right?
I
And
realize that island people, they just join a lot of things together and
right,
make it
right,
one
right.
long word.
So it's like,
Meow.
and that's kind of like, like, oh God,
Yeah.
or miam, miam, for true. You know, yeah.
Well, this was really awesome speaking with you. So if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, tell them your website, social media, what's the best places they can find you.
So it's JulietteJeffers.com, and that's spelled with 2 T's and an E at the end for Juliet. And then at Juliette Jeffers on all social media.
Okay, awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you so much for joining me today.
thank
And for
you.
our viewers, you can always catch me on all the relevant social media. That's MSS for multi-talented and super sexy. Until we lime again, don't forget to inspire and empower.